A message has arrived that Crown Prince Pahlavi of Iran will lead the transitional government. The message came from the Iranian resistance movement. Within 20 minutes, you will learn all the latest news, including why the army did not resist or react in any way to the landing of the paratroopers. American. A lot hasn't happened yet. Of course, it's not over, but it really seems like Iran is returning to an era of normalcy. Crown Prince Pahlavi sent a message to the people that he is returning, and with him will come law and order. And not Sharia law, but the law that existed in Iran before the Shah was overthrown. Reza Pahlavi, the father of the current crown prince, by the way, also Reza Pahlavi, Reza II, I think that's what he calls himself, who was at that time when they fled Iran. Reza Jr. was 19, studied in Maryland, then in California, and in recent years lived in Washington. Reza, the son, he supports the free market, freedom of speech, and sees Trump as the most pro-Iranian politician. In recent decades, he has been what we call a classical liberal, meaning a convinced, committed capitalist and supporter of the free market. Reza has a very good relationship with the leadership of Israel, and in every way looks like the ideal candidate to create a constitutional monarchy similar to the British one, but with much more anti-socialist views than most Western European politicians. In 10 days of the uprising, the Ayatollah regime has already killed, just in the last few days, 40 rebels and arrested 1,200. So far, this has only enraged the residents who from all over the country have headed to the capital and completely flooded it. Absolutely flooded it. The streets of Tehran, crowds ended up in the capital in such numbers that the Revolutionary Guard Corps was forced to retreat and release people. What we would call downtown, they in Tehran call the Grand Bazaar, well, the Grand Bazaar district. So here is Tehran with crowds of people shouting, "Long live the Shah!" There is no resistance. Who's in charge in Iran? Huge crowds of determined Iranian citizens were directed to Tehran by someone. Late at night, the city streets were blocked by the people. Before the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps could leave their barracks and block the access roads, someone, having found out that the deployment of the Corps was planned for late morning, moved and brought the people. Not just moved and brought them, hundreds of thousands of people from all over the country. Actually, instead of the main battle, I don't even know how to put it more precisely, to the capital of the country. Where is this headquarters? Why? It still hasn't been discovered by the Iranian secret police, who, by the way, are equipped with equipment from China. Maybe this center isn't in Iran. Maybe thousands of organizers across the country are connected to the center, which the Chinese equipment can't intercept. How does a country of millions act like a well-coordinated orchestra? It kind of reminds me of the pager operation. Doesn't it remind you of that too? No, I mean in terms of coordination, coverage, and most importantly, creative and technical ingenuity. Here's a street in Tehran today. Subtitles by Long live the Shah. The subtitle editor is interrupted by shouts of death to Khomeini, death to the regime. But the protesters themselves, of course, cannot defeat the regime with its Revolutionary Guard Corps. Regimes understand regimes. All regimes recognize only one language, and that's the language of force, brutal force. The army hasn't intervened yet, but then who will make the Revolutionary Guard Corps flee? Could it be that the brilliant organizer of this first part of the operation has no plans for a follow-up? What is the government afraid of? The Corps doesn't shoot at the crowd for one reason. There's an uncle across the ocean, and that uncle has a very big stick.
When huge crowds of people gather from all over the country, they don't really understand what they're supposed to do. And they're actually afraid to openly shoot at everyone, because they know that President Trump will mobilize his troops. United States forces in the Middle East and from Europe, and of course the Israelis. And here's where the plot twist comes in, because there are rumors, unconfirmed reports, we can't verify this. But I'm not surprised. I'm surprised that the Islamic Republic is preparing to launch a preemptive strike against Israel.
The best thing Ayatollah could come up with is to start shelling Israel with rockets and shift the world's attention to Israel's response. Using this as cover, they brutally disperse protesters claiming it's war, so everything will be excused.
Unless they have a big plan to somehow immediately destroy Israel, this won't end well.
I confirm this will not end very well for the regime. And instead of a comfortable retirement in Moscow, Khomeini and his family will end up in a mass grave, somewhere in the middle of the ruins of an unidentified complex, where they were hiding and hoping until the very last moment that they would outsmart everyone. I'm afraid Ali won't be living in the apartment next to Bashar Assad and his family. Axis of evil. But what kind of blow will this be to the interests of Russia and China? The invested money, efforts, years of friendship between the mullahs and the Lake Cooperative, shared girls, drinking, saunas, all of this goes down the drain because of the damned Americans and the equally damned Zionists.
But yes, for now, the Iranians control the streets. Tonight won't be easy. Obviously, we'll be here to provide you with full live coverage as events unfold. But as I said, we should probably expect reinforcements coming from Qom, from Hamadan, maybe even from cities that are a bit farther away to reach Tehran and retake the city. Because it's a disgrace, you lose the capital and you start to lose, well, your city, your basic authority, which you need to be a strong dictator.
The regime will attack Israel and at the same time its own citizens who have taken over the streets of the capital under the cover of night. The core will attack, and attack harshly and bloodily.
People are taking to the streets, and this is happening not just in one city, not just in one district. According to reports that you see on the internet and in the media, many hotspots, many cities. And for many days in a row now, people who not long ago just wanted to work, to go home, to survive, are now loudly shouting, "Death to the dictator." The security forces look completely exhausted. Basij is becoming a target, and they are paying for it with blood. Reports mention deaths, injuries, live ammunition used, and arrests. And the Khamenei regime no longer talks about protests, it calls them rioters and hints at a harsh crackdown. And then comes a moment that shocks everyone. Trump, according to circulating quotes, makes an unusual threat. If they continue shooting their protesters, the United States will intervene after Venezuela. This phrase sounds completely different. The question is whether we are at the beginning of a real revolution or just another wave that will crash against the wall of fear.
What happens next, we don't know how it will end. But for the first time in 47 years of Islamist rule in Iran, the country has a chance. Just like for the first time in 27 years, Venezuela has a chance. By the way, an interesting detail is that the gray eminence of the regime is Corca Rodriguez, who is also called the Rasputin of the regime in Venezuela. Previously, he was vice president. Now he has become the head of parliament and pushed his own sister, his real sister, I think, into the vice presidency, Camaduria, and now she has become president. So, the Rodriguez family has in their hands, well, practically both the executive and legislative power. Both are Marxists, both are connected with the military and with the cartels, of course, and they will move in whatever direction is most beneficial for them, period. Let's look at these two countries, Iran and Venezuela, as parts of the same playing field where guess who is playing? Guess who, Donald J. Trump?
Is burning from within? Iran is burning from within, and then news comes from Venezuela. President Maduro disappears overnight and ends up in United States custody. Incredible, and suddenly something happens in Tehran that dictators fear the most. People on the streets start to wonder, if it happened to him, why couldn't it happen to them too? When Iran is shaken to its core, the entire Middle East feels it, and so does the whole world. The first thing to understand is that this protest didn't start yesterday, and it wasn't caused by just a slogan or a single specific event. For many years, Iran has been trying to free itself from the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. This protest stems from three layers that have developed over years and are now erupting together. The first layer is life itself. Iran has invested more in attempts to destroy Israel than in its own citizens. People in Iran are tired of the insane cost of living, a currency that is devaluing and is worth almost nothing, crumbling infrastructure, and the feeling that there is no room left to breathe. And Iranians, especially the middle class, understand that the unspoken agreement with the regime has been broken. We'll remain silent if you provide a minimum standard of living, but when that's gone, people have nothing left to lose. The second layer is slowly destroying fear city by city, group by group, among those who once stayed silent. Students, merchants, workers, even ordinary people understand that the regime may look strong, but after Trump and Netanyahu, it is not unbreakable. When fear breaks, there's a psychological shift as the public realizes it's stronger than the government. Pause. Now, the third level is what happens outside the country. And this time, it's crucial because for years, Iran has been used to play the same game. When internal pressure sparks a fire outside the country, when people are frustrated, it redirects attention to the so-called enemy, to hatred, to confrontation, to puppets, to missiles, to threats. And in short, who does Iran hate more than us? But now, after everything that has happened over this past year, was humiliated after the strikes and sanctions. The question is whether he still has the strength to ignite the region, distract from internal issues, and suppress domestic opposition. This is where we begin our deep dive into the topic of this episode.
It's astonishing how Islamic leaders spent billions, tens of billions, to build tunnels running underground into Israel for arming and funding Hezbollah, the Houthis, and other Palestinian groups. How was money burned in the attempt to create long-range missiles and weapons of mass destruction, completely ignoring their own people, not listening to them at all? I thought of an interesting comparison. Europe practically spent nothing on defense and ended up defenseless against Russia, which has 4 times less population and 10 to 20 times less industry than the European Union. And Iran, on the contrary, spent everything on war, on attack, on destruction, and completely neglected everything else. This is an example that you just can't put all your eggs in one basket, ladies and gentlemen, no matter what kind of basket it is. Social needs or armaments, military spending. Both are extremes that lead to problems. So what should we do? Balance and combine caring for welfare with caring for security.
We want to answer the main question. Is this the moment when Iran starts to fall apart from within, or is it the moment when it becomes more dangerous from the outside? Because both of these options can be absolutely true at the same time.
What we talked about earlier is happening. The regime is starting to have convulsions. Both in Britain and in Europe, they are starting to ban freedom of speech and other freedoms, while Iran is starting to look for an external enemy to distract attention from the crackdowns on its own citizens. A raid under the microscope. I want you to learn some new details about the capture of Maduro and the situation in Venezuela. Listen to Bill O'Reilly, who knows the situation.
They targeted Maduro and his wife, who were at a military base outside Caracas in a so-called safe place. And it wasn't safe because the deal was made even before the American Delta forces came in with the CIA. That the Venezuelan military would not defend the dictator Maduro.
That is, Venezuela's defense just shut down. Russia can't sleep peacefully. It's not their air defense system. It's the Venezuelan army that gave up Maduro.
And right now, the CIA is actually controlling the situation in Venezuela from the American embassy in Caracas. There's no American ambassador there. Obviously, the CIA is giving orders, acting together with the Venezuelan military. That's why there's no crazy chaos happening there.
I'm not quite clear about the behavior of the current president, Rodriguez, and her brother, the de facto ruler of Venezuela.
The criminal syndicate that Maduro allegedly worked with is called the Cartel de los Soles, S-O-L-E-S. Got it. In the summer of this year, and then again in November, the Trump administration officially recognized the Venezuelan Cartel de los Soles as a terrorist organization. This means that under American law, we have the full right to use American military personnel to strike this cartel, just as we do. We did this for the Soleimani attack.
Do you remember that? We dealt with them, with the Iranian henchmen,
with Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, and with Osama bin Laden. That is,
As you understand, the operation to change Venezuela's course wasn't prepared just yesterday, but maybe, in fact, from the very first days of Trump's presidency. You understand that we don't even know a tenth of what is happening and being planned. That's why I'm not criticizing the administration's actions. Before that, or when I don't understand something, or it seems to me that something isn't the way I would like it to be, I don't interfere. I wait to understand and figure out the cartels and politics, considering that this particular cartel has been recognized as a terrorist organization. The President of the United States didn't need Congress's permission to use the military to fight it. So what does Bill think about Rayleigh? And his thoughts are usually influenced, let's say, by his information directly from the White House, information that I'm sure comes with the full consent and participation of Donald J. Trump.
I don't think we should have an American military presence freely moving around that country. But undoubtedly, we as the American government should oversee the Venezuelans in order to temporarily stabilize the situation and hold free and fair elections.
So, not to send our soldiers, but still to govern the country. Since I don't understand, I'll answer like this. Well, my opinion is that I don't know. That doesn't mean that Edcliffe Rubio or Trump don't know. Maybe Vance is sitting there somewhere on an aircraft carrier near Venezuela, talking with politicians and generals, forming the Union of Unity and what's it called, the Government of National Popular Unity, and distributing the portfolios of future ministers. But it's possible that the idea that the CIA is running the country is just a fantasy, because there are reports that the security forces and agencies are arresting protesters who are demanding the overthrow of the regime. Maduro, maybe. Maduro they overthrew, but as for the regime, they don't want to overthrow the one that is their own regime. For now, it's hard to figure all this out. Although when a journalist asked, "Who is running Venezuela today?" Trump answered briefly and clearly. He said, "We are running it." So Venezuela and Iran are falling apart at the seams. For now, from our point of view, the bad guys are still in power, but the ground is shaking under their feet, as they say. Who else should be trembling? The Cuban comrades? They're practically wetting themselves. They're clearly next. NE. Kyrgyz is also nervous because they've gotten too close to Russia and China. In general, some leaders of Latin American, Middle Eastern, and African countries have realized that an alliance with China could backfire and affect their lifespan. I would add to this list the cautious commanders of Brazil, Colombia, Chile, Uruguay, and Honduras. Speaking of our hemisphere, North Korea can still sleep peacefully unless we've started digging a tunnel right into their bedroom, the great helmsman of all Korean tribes and peoples. What a wonderful country Korea is, yet what a freak is ruling it. Rave it, rave it. General Secretarian, of course, declared the dangerous precedent of Maduro's capture, but nobody has listened to him for a long time, and he's so unnecessary to everyone that nobody is even planning to capture him. I can almost guarantee his safety thanks to his absolute uselessness. Well, that's all the news for now, ladies and gentlemen, but it's coming in every second. So, at least for now, there's nothing new regarding China and Russia. Without Venezuela and Iran, the axis of Islam and plain fascism will be weakened, seriously weakened. But I'm not sure yet that the forces of good have prevailed in these countries, so we'll watch and hope until tomorrow.